Welcome to The Detail. I am your host, Kathy Antunes, and you are listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. We are social distancing. I'm coming to you from my home, but with me today, we have the District 3 candidates for City Commission, all joining us live here on WSLR. So I'd like to welcome them. We have Eric Arroyo, Dan Claremont, and Rob Grant. Gentlemen, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Yep. Can you hear me?
All right. And for the audience, we're broadcasting live, but you can also watch us online on the WSLR Facebook page or the WSLR website. So gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. Just the ground rules, there are three of you, and we like this format to get to know you. I may interrupt you if time becomes an issue. I'd prefer not to time you. So if you would just be cognizant of, I've got a bunch of questions that we want to get through here. So to the extent that you can be succinct, but not at the expense of clarity, we want to know what you think. I would appreciate that. So my first question is, who are you? Tell us about yourself and why you're running for City Commission District 3. And Eric, we will start with you.
Hey, thank you for having me, Kathy. My name is Eric Arroyo, and I'm an attorney here in Sarasota. I specialize in business and wills and trusts. I went to high school here in Sarasota, and I've really seen the city change. I met my wife in high school, who's a teacher at Sarasota High School, and I'm very in tune with the education system, with the homelessness downtown, just because of my involvement. I'm a judge at teen court, and growing up in the city, I know the opportunities that are afforded. See, I was the first in my family to graduate from high school, and I was the first to come to America, really, because I came from the Dominican Republic as a teenager. And there are many opportunities that are afforded to people in this community, and I feel that I feel I can give back to this community. I feel it's time for someone who is local to represent the people of Sarasota, because District 3 has gone underrepresented for a long time.
Okay, thank you, Eric Arroyo. Dan Claremont, tell us about yourself and why are you running?
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Rob and Eric. My name is Dan Claremont, and my wife, Yvette, and I moved to the area 10 years ago last week, and we love it here. Lived originally in Green Bay, where I owned a couple of businesses, employing as many as 35 people. And I think I want to bring that sensibility to the commission. There's not a lot of that on the commission right now, and we're going to be entering into a period of time here, it seems, where we're going to have some economic challenges, and somebody who's been through some of that might be helpful to the city. I had a business at the time when we had a recession in the early 90s. And of course, I was in business when we had the Great Recession 10 years ago. And those are difficult experiences, but ones that allow you to prepare yourself for what we may be facing coming up here. There are some I should mention first, when we first moved here 10 years ago, one of the first things I did was embark on buying homes and rehabilitating them, turn them into rentals. And we bought one, then another, and another, first one on Jamaica Street here in Sarasota. And what it did is it gave me a stake in the area. And nothing focuses you on the city like owning property here. And we have 10 units, and it became something I obviously paid a lot of attention to. And somebody said, Dan, you really seem to be interested. Maybe you should consider running for the commission. And in so doing, there are certain things, of course, that are very important to me, and things that have crystallized. And we have the issue of environmental infrastructure here. We need to improve our wastewater management system. We've begun that process. It's a 10-year-long, very expensive process, and it's incumbent upon the commission to shepherd that project through. We also have, under the umbrella of infrastructure issues, stormwater management. And as we redevelop, we have to make sure that we are using impervious surfaces as much as possible. Another thing that I think is very important as we head into an economically challenging time is addressing issues and challenges we have with the arts and culture industry here. That's the second largest employer in the city. We can't ignore that. It's very important to us. Also, too, and it's a big deal in our district, and that is the parks, public spaces, and neighborhoods, and that basically describes District 3. We don't have a big business community there. It is about the parks, Payne Park, Arlington Park, Bobby Jones. There are issues there where we want to make sure we maintain those public spaces. Once you lose them, you don't get them back. So look forward to the questions.
Okay, Dan, thanks so much for joining us. And our third candidate today is Rob Grant, again running for District 3 City Commission. Rob, thanks for being here. What inspired you to, who are you? Tell us about yourself and what inspired you to run for City Commission.
Hi, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this process, most of all. Like Eric, I graduated from high school here in Sarasota, although not a native. I was born in Tampa. I've always considered Sarasota my home since graduating. I was in ROTC, became battalion commander at school, decided not to go into public service like my father, who was a retired serviceman and retired Hillsborough County Sheriff's Deputy. I felt that I could serve the community better by going out and being successful. And what I found was that I wanted to be a writer. And so I landed a job in DC after graduating from American University as a writer, working for Dow Jones. And it was an amazing experience. And it really opened up the world to it started me on the path where I am today. Covered a wide range of business sectors, real estate, pharmaceuticals, and spent a really interesting period of time on the mergers and acquisitions desk and covered the contentious merger of HP and Compaq. I finally decided I needed to move back to Sarasota because it was my home and I missed it. So I moved back down here and and got involved in business here in Sarasota as a participant rather than a spectator. And I was able to use my skills as in accounting, bookkeeping, business management, everything that I learned from talking to investors, reading financial reports and annual reports, and analyzing them. And now I believe that I have helped a lot of businesses, our community, and nonprofits thrive and succeed and even be prepared for challenges that we're all going to face. Of course, none of us could have wholly prepared for what we face today. And that's a lot of the reason that I decided to get involved in the commission, in this race for the commission. Over the past year, I've been involved in a number of issues with the city, Lido, Payne Park, particularly here in my neighborhood. There's some large-scale developments. We formed a committee, the Preserve Arlington Park Committee, and we have worked hard on a number of development issues related, large-scale development issues adjacent to our neighborhood. So I've been active with the commission for the past year, talking to commissioners, working with neighbors, and trying to coordinate between those two parties and developers as well. About 2 weeks ago, as the nation was dealing with the pandemic, and now we have protests, and finally I think we're on a path to achieving some real equality here. That was sort of my call. I'd spent a number of months with these small businesses and nonprofits filing PPP loans, trying to figure out ways to make it through this period. And then we have another problem that develops in our nation. And it was a call to arms for me. It's something I believe in. And I think that if we can address some of these problems, I think all the issues that we're going to talk about here over the next hour would be easier to manage and would be easier to find solutions. We'll just close with this. Earlier this week, I was in an office and something was up on the wall and it said, "Culture is the soil in which everything in the organization lives or dies." And it just really struck a note with me. And I'm here to ensure that the culture of our wonderful city is maintained and continues.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, so much for those introductions. We're going to start with what's really top of mind in the country, what the Black Lives Matter movement, and obviously the death of another Mr. Brooks in Georgia, I believe it is, George Floyd. You know, the nation is very focused on racial inequality and police misconduct, excessive force. Prior to the death of George Floyd, there was an incident of excessive force in Sarasota where a police officer put his knee on the neck of a Black man who was being arrested in Newtown. So it's a two-part question. what are your thoughts on the city of Sarasota's approach to policing? What, if anything, what do you think needs to change? Obviously, what happened before George Floyd's death here in Sarasota was a problem. And then putting the officer using his knee to detain a black man. And then the second part is with regard to the conversations about defunding the police. Policing is half of the city's budget. And with the understanding that defunding the police means looking at that budget and seeing if resources should be reallocated. I want to know what your thoughts on the police budget, and should there be any reallocation of resources? Rob, we'll start with you.
Sure. Let's see. How do I begin? Obviously, we have some issues in our own police department that we're going to have to address. And I do believe, like, on the streets and when it comes to officers dealing with citizens and residents, it's a matter of training. And that training is a part of the culture. It comes from the culture that is created at the top. I think the budget, if they're gonna reallocate some of these resources, I think they need to speak with the chief and work with her to do that, and find out if they reallocate those to some public assistance programs and some other things that will allow the police to do the job they're supposed to do. I think we have the police doing too many jobs today, and that may be part of the reason their budget is so big. They have a number of responsibilities, and maybe we could provide them with training and the resources, and that might mean taking the control of that out from under the chief of police and putting it somewhere else. So those are the kinds of things that I would look into. I think it's training. If we're going to reallocate these resources to some public assistance and some other programs that will take some of these difficult tasks away from the police officers and put them in people who are professionals and know how to address them.
Okay. Thank you, Rob, for that answer. And Eric, what are your thoughts about these questions? Do you need me to repeat them?
No, I know your question. Okay. So as growing up here in Sarasota, I've dealt with the law enforcement officers through my life. I mean, I've done a ride along. I know some of the sergeants and the lieutenants. It boils down to training and hiring well. There was a period there that for 4 years we didn't give them a raise. None of the police officers. The only person that got a raise was the police chief. And I think we need to take care of the officers. We need to provide training. We need to hire well. We need to make sure that the responsibilities we're allocating are not too many. We can't expect them to do everything. But one thing that we're not going to do is defund the police department, because we have so many unintended consequences of that, like an increase in crime, right? There's less safety, the property values go down, you name it. So we're not going to defund the police, but we are going to provide training, we're going to hire well, and we're going to make sure that the police, we grow together as a community with the police.
Okay, Eric, thank you. And then Dan, your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, what happened with the George Floyd case, I mean, obviously was terrible. I mean, you don't need a candidate for District 3 in Sarasota to tell anybody that was clear, and we all agree on it. That happened in Minneapolis. You have a bad cop with racist attitudes, and I'm not sure what took over him that day, but that doesn't necessarily have to reflect on the Sarasota police. I've spent time with the police, and I've spent time with the deputy chief. I've listened to the chief speak. I've done a ride along as well. And my experiences with the police have been very positive. But I look a certain way. And we have to recognize that the difficulty in the minority community, that's not only the Black community, that's the Hispanic community and others, is that they look at it differently. And we have to recognize that. And, racism is a thing. And we talk about it as being institutional, and it is, but it does start with each of us individually. And so what happens is many of us think, well, it's an institutional problem. That problem is happening over there. It's not with me. And that's where the danger is that we have to look at our own, we have to reflect ourselves. What's within us? How do we as individuals behave? And we have to bring that to the commission and understand that in all of us, we have prejudices at times. We just have to make sure that we go beyond that in our behavior and how we run the city. As far as the police department goes and the new catchphrase of defunding the police, I absolutely disagree with that. That's not going to go anywhere. We're not going to defund the police. I understand the point behind it, and that is the general distrust of the police. Well, I don't think that that's necessarily the case in Sarasota. We have a good police department here, and what we have to do is we have to make sure they have the best equipment possible, the best training that is possible, and we have to look at, no cop likes a bad cop because it reflects badly on them. And in many police departments, there are bad cops, and maybe there are some here, and then the chief has to struggle with removing that police officer, and then they're reinstated later. That can't happen. We have to have a path. If there is a bad cop in the force, we have to be able to remove them.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you for those answers. I want to move now to an issue that is specific to District 3. This is the proposal to put 233 apartments at the corner of Bay Vista and Tuttle. This is where the old Doctors Hospital used to be. 35 units, or 15% of that project, is supposed to be affordable housing, and this would require a change to the comprehensive plan. So, two questions. One, I want to know if you support that project as it's proposed, and if not, why? How would you change it? And then the follow-up is, these affordable housing components always seem to have a way of disappearing. We're promised affordable housing. Here it's 15% in exchange for this increased density and change to the comprehensive plan. But at the end of the day, the affordable housing disappears. So, do you support the project? If not, how would you change it? And what about making sure we actually get affordable housing? I am going to start with Rob.
Hi. All right. So this is the issue. This is the issue for me in Arlington Park that really sparked the formation of our committee. We had already begun talking with neighbors and this sort of thing about other things that have been going on. And when we found out about this development, this was the call to action for us here. So obviously, we don't support the proposal as it stands today. We don't believe it's great for the neighborhood. And in fact, the neighborhood we're aware of one person in the neighborhood that was contacted before this was put out. And we don't think that was the best way for the developer to go about this. We think that they're moving forward. In fact, I believe they're moving forward as if this is a done deal. They have already split the property. They've already gotten approval to move forward with the medical office that will be right at the corner of Bay Vista and Tuttle. Basically, they're splitting the property into two parcels, and they're moving the medical offices that are currently there up to the front of the corner in a one-story building, and then they will be essentially wrapping the proposed apartments around. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm just going to ask you, because we do have to watch time.
Sure.
Do you support it? Would you change it?
I would change it.
And
I would ask for big, bold development. And as for the affordable housing, I'm sorry. I'll go ahead.
No,
sorry.
How would you change it? And then how do we keep the affordable housing?
Sure. I believe what we need is some big, bold development decisions. And some of those have been suggested. Andrew Jorditis had some ideas on your show, in fact. And I just feel like those things are not considered. And I think the developer needs to be creative. And if we're going to give away, something to the developer, the increased density, which means increased profits for them, and things like this, we need to get the neighborhood needs to get big, bold development that's creative. And those affordable housing units, they have to be codified. I don't believe that those affordable housing units really give the neighborhood enough in return for what the developer is getting. And we're going to have to explore what kind of other incentives might be for a development like this.
Okay. All right. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a hot button issue. When I go around door to door, people's veins are popping out of their necks and discussing it. And I understand. I understand that it's significant change, and people get concerned about traffic. They get concerned about people walking their dogs, and just a big change in their neighborhood. Sarasota is growing, as is Sarasota County, and it's kind of like tectonic plates. They're pushing against each other as we have needs for housing, as we have the needs of the neighborhoods. The biggest problem I see is that the comprehensive plan hasn't been addressed since 2005. And so as we look at these micro issues such as this, it kind of goes back to, let's take a look at that comprehensive plan. Why do we keep on having these problems where neighborhoods are running into development? That's something that needs to be addressed. More specific to this, I don't know that it's reached its final form. There was there's a preliminary plan. I don't know how far it is down the road as far as approvals go. I mean, it's going to require a 4-to-1 vote on the commission. Very difficult to get those kind of changes, and they haven't been happening. Do I like the project or don't I? I mean, I haven't seen a traffic plan yet on it. I haven't seen the fully formed, I've been on a jury 3 times, and the judge never says, Dan, what is your verdict, prior to seeing all the evidence. So I would like to see the evidence. It's different when you're a neighbor living right there than when you're going to be an official in the city. You do have to take the whole view before you render a decision. And we do have to at least give the entire process and city staff and everybody a chance to break this down. I certainly respect the neighbors there and what they're concerned about.
Okay. Eric, what are your thoughts?
So the Arlington Commons project is a 4.67 acre site that's right on Bay Vista and Tuttle. And what has been committed is that there would be affordable housing between 80 and 100% of area median income. That's what affordable housing is, which could roughly come out to be like $1,400 a month in rent. So 5% of the units in the project are going to be affordable housing, which result in about 35 affordable units. First, I don't think that's enough, because I feel that if we're going to increase density more, the requirement for affordable housing should be more. We should also increase with it. It should be directly proportional. And I also think that the neighborhoods that's sort of been left out, and there has been no traffic study. There are other projects in the area that I support, but I do not support that Arlington project as it stands today. That could change in the future. Okay.
Alrighty. So gentlemen, my next question has to do with an issue that has a way of resurrecting itself. It's strong mayor. And right now we have a commission form of government with a city manager. Mr. Barwin basically runs the day-to-day, and he gets his instruction from the city commission. 5 commissioners, 3 are districted, and you're running for District 3, and 2 of those commissioners are at large. There have been proposals to create a strong mayor, which basically is more of a CEO of the city with a commission that only has some budget oversight. And I'm wondering 2 things. This has gotten voted down 4 times I think it's in the past 15 to 20 years. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, 1, do you support a strong mayor? And 2, if you do, would you be a vote on the city commission to putting an amendment on the ballot to create a strong mayor? That's never been done. In other words, the city commission, all these initiatives have come from the citizens who want a strong mayor, but they've all been voted down. We've never had a commission vote to put a strong mayor amendment on the ballot. So, do you support a strong mayor? And would you vote to put an amendment on the ballot to create one? Eric, we'll start with you.
Okay, so the people want a strong mayor. They want someone who is in charge of the city, that is full-time, accountable, and compensated accordingly. Right now, we have a part-time city commission with very limited knowledge of the policies and procedures and legal aspects of running a city, and they're not there all the time. They don't understand. They can't even talk to each other. Whereas if you have some people and staff who can talk to every single one of the commissions, it creates a very, very difficult dichotomy. I am in favor of a strong mayor. I am in favor of a referendum so the people can vote, or making an amendment so that we require one. Absolutely, 100%.
Okay. Dan, how about you?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see a lot of difference here. We live in a city of 58,000 people that is really the center of an area that is a metro area of 720,000. And so we need to have a strong leader who is dealing with the problems that are foisted upon us by a large community around us. And I do favor having a strong executive. And but the question is, would we put that on a ballot? I would. We have voted on it in the past. It's been encumbered by other issues. The city was a different place at the time. We are seeing constant issues that happen, from Marie Selby to the Bath and Racket to intergovernmental issues that happen with the county and the school board. That's because we don't have somebody who is charged with being an executive who can make the call. And we do need to have a leader. Constantly, we are having a vacuum of leadership when we have issues between neighborhoods and arts and culture and whatever development that comes along. What we need in those instances is we need somebody who sits at the table with them before those divisions happen. And right now, that doesn't happen with a part-time commission, as Eric said, that can't speak with one another. And then you have a CEO, essentially, who is not charged with creating policy. And so it's a back and forth as to who's in charge. And really what it comes down to is putting it to the city voters and saying, what do you think? And yeah, I would favor giving them that opportunity.
How about you, Rob?
Aye. So personally, as a voter and a citizen, I do not believe a strong mayor is the best thing for the city of Sarasota. Now, if the voters decide, they want to decide, I am not going to stand in that way. Now, as a commissioner, would I vote? You know what? I would talk to the people too. And if most people say, yes, we want you to vote for this and we want you to get this in the vote, no matter what my personal beliefs, because of how I feel about the way our government should function and my role in it, I would support what the people ask me to do. Okay, so personally, moving to a strong mayor versus the current commission manager structure would dramatically reduce the voice of the people. Right now, the way I see it, each voter has 3 votes in decisions that happen in this city. They have 2 at-large votes, and they also have the representative for their district. If the power is vested in the people to make the decisions via their representatives, more of a bottom-up approach, and that's how the city has functioned. With a strong mayor, decisions by the commissioners, which represent the voice of the people, could be vetoed by one person. It concerns me a lot, given the way we've seen the top-down form of government at other levels function in our nation. By that, I mean that elections for a strong mayor could bring partisanship, politics to the city hall, and I really think that is contrary to the culture that has developed in our city over the years. So thank you.
Okay, all right. And just to remind my listeners, if you're just joining us, you're listening to the District 3 City Commissioner Forum here on WSLR. My guests are Eric Arroyo, Dan Claremont, and Rob Grant. You're listening to WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. Streets of Paradise prepares and serves meals for Sarasota's homeless and food insecure every evening at 6:30 p.m. outside the Salvation Army on 10th Street. For more information on donating or volunteering, go to streetsofparadise.org. So that's my segue to the next question. Sarasota has made progress with assisting the homeless population. However, we do have a chronic homeless population, which, they have mental health issues, addiction issues. These are the folks who are really the toughest to help get into housing. So, starting with Dan, what would your approach be to addressing the homeless problem in Sarasota?
Well, first, what I'd like to say is I think we've come a long way. The city, I think, at one time, was there was the term meanest city in America when it came to homelessness, and I think the response to that has been good. The city has a pretty good outreach as far as like having a hot team, having a Housing First program through St. Vincent de Paul, where people are scored and then put into permanent housing. We have a mental health court now. We have a community care court dealing with vagrancy and so on, so that everybody's just immediately thrown into jail. We do have some great people who work in nonprofits, and we steer people then into Harvest House. We can still steer them into the Viper program. there are also individuals who run second chance type housing and so on, and we have to encourage that type of thing. And in the easy thing, right, it would be to say, well, we need to have more counselors, we need to have more people with outreach, and normally I would say that's what we need to do. However, the reality is right now we might be tightening our belt at the city, making it more of a challenge where we have to rely more upon the institutions that are there that are nonprofit. We also have efforts being made now by Castle, Scott Eller, who's built a beautiful facility for 84 affordable homes for people who are homeless and who have jobs. So I don't want to pile on the city and say they're not doing a terrific job. What we have to do is we just have to continue moving forward with that. I don't know that in 100 years we will solve the homeless problem, because people have a right to be homeless. However, one last point I would make is if they are homeless, they still have to abide by the rules of the city. And that is something that's important. They have the right to be out there. They also have the responsibility to abide by the rules.
Okay. Eric, what are your thoughts on addressing homelessness in Sarasota?
So I'm glad you say that, because I'm a big supporter of Streets of Paradise. I saw them feed 200 homeless people last year, Thanksgiving. I'm on the Sheriff's Advisory Board, and one thing we know is that we can't jail our way out of this problem. I've had many years of experience dealing with the homeless population in Sarasota. And because of that, if you were to go to Venice and Northport, and you were to ask them what they do with their homeless population, they say, we send them to Sarasota. Why is that? Because the services are here, because tourism is here, and the money that you get from tourism. So we're a funnel. Not only that, but if you look at the closure of the Salvation Army in Bradenton, that creates more homeless people that are coming here to get the services. It's not because they're sending them down here for any malicious reason. They're just trying to get them the services they need. We need to make it a priority to get the homeless into permanent supportive housing or the continuum of care, and we make that a priority. That's it. That is how we solve homelessness. That's how Clearwater got rid of 98% of all the reduced homelessness by 98%. We have a public awareness campaign. We provide remote services that are location independent, and we reduce crime downtown by starting a diversion program. I've said this many times. I've outlined my 7-step process to getting rid of to reducing homelessness and to really bettering our downtown area. Because we'll be providing the services we need, we'll be helping the people with care, but we'll also be making a better downtown in Sarasota a better city to live in.
Okay, and Rob, you're up next.
Yes. So, the thing with homelessness is it's not one issue. You can't address one thing. There's no silver bullet for this. And I totally agree with Eric. I think the biggest problem the city of Sarasota has is that it seems often like we have all the services and we're the only ones that are actually trying to help. And I think the first thing I would do is the county has to be a part of this. Some of these facilities, some of these services, they have to be available elsewhere. Homeless people are not just people who push around carts. They're families. They're folks that just end up in unfortunate circumstances, sometimes that they did not cause. And so I think the first thing is we have to get the entire community involved. The county and these other cities in the county sending people here, it's just not acceptable. And we've got to address that first. We have these programs, but they need to be elsewhere rather than just in the city of Sarasota.
Okay, so getting back to affordable housing, one of the approaches, and last fall, the county adopted a new plan to permit accessory dwelling units. And for the audience, accessory dwelling units, they've been called granny flats or mother-in-law suites. But this is where you have a single family home with a small apartment on site that in the past typically was for an aging parent. But they're also a very effective way to weave affordable housing into the community. So my question to you all is, what role do you see in District 3 for accessory dwelling units as an approach to increasing our stock of affordable housing? Are you against it? Do you support them? What should they look like if you think they're a good idea? So Eric, we'll start with you.
I'm absolutely in support of accessory dwelling units. So I went to law school and I took a bunch of property courses. And not only do you have a bunch of property rights, a bundle of rights to do what you want on your property, but the government really can't take that away from you. And the city of Sarasota is a little restrictive in what you can do in your own property. And some of it is justified and some of it is not. Research has shown that a city grows stronger if you make small bets, incremental bets. You redo a street here, you you add some trees here, you reduce how difficult it is to just add a door or an accessory dwelling unit on your property. That helps with affordable housing. That helps with the aesthetics of the neighborhood, and it makes for a stronger city. 100% in support.
Okay, Dan Claremont, your thoughts?
Yeah, I as well. I support the accessory dwelling units, and somebody I had heard about a study when I was listening in on it was that as many as 10% of the units in Arlington Park may, or I shouldn't say units, but homes may eventually have accessory dwelling units if they're allowed. And when you look at that, there are about 1,400 places here, so it'd be another 140 affordable units, and I think that's okay to do. And it solves a problem of family issues when you want to have somebody who needs a little bit of help live with you, and you want them to have their own place out in the yard so they can have their own pride in their own residence. I think that's terrific, and I think it helps people also to stay in their homes because then they can rent that unit out. Because we face those challenges as we get older, we retire, and to be able to do that and stay in your home would be terrific. One thing I would add to that, though, is I would say that there has to be a requirement that the owner lives on the property. Otherwise, it can turn into something where it becomes kind of a party thing, where you have a renter in the main home, and now you got somebody in the back, and they're doing Airbnb type of thing. We can't have that because you do have the adjacent neighbors who have a right to peace and quiet, and they shouldn't have that 10 feet from their border or even 5 feet from their border. So I would say I'm in for it, but we have to have some restriction as to how it's run.
Okay, Dan, thank you. And Rob Grant, what are your thoughts on permitting accessory dwelling units in District 3?
Yeah, I support them as well, but I do agree with Dan. There's going to have to be some safeguards in place if this is to move forward in the city of Sarasota. I live on Floyd Street in Arlington Park. There is an Airbnb 2 houses down. There's an accessory, or not an accessory dwelling unit because they're not allowed, but essentially it looks like that. It was built in the backyard of folks that live across the street from me. So I think it's a good idea. I think that we really need to look at the details as to how it's going to be implemented, and keep in mind that it is an increase in density to the area that these things are available. So this is just something for the neighbors to consider as they make these decisions. I don't think it's a bad thing, but the design, I think with the design and how it's placed on the property and that sort of thing is very important. I know some folks are unhappy with a couple of these large structures that have been placed right up to their backyard from the people behind it. So, but yeah, I support accessory dwelling units. We just have to make sure that there's some safeguards so that it's not abused.
Okay, all right. So one of the chronic concerns in Sarasota for voters, residents of the city, is how is our city going to grow? We have this identity as a kind of a livable city, a smaller city with big city amenities, our arts and culture, the airport, but it's a manageable size. So I would like to ask you, and I'm going to point to the view, the building at Gulfstream and 41, that was met with a lot of public consternation and upset because it is really close to the sidewalk, and people who are upset about that feel it's quite out of place and imposing. This was a project that was approved by city staff. It did not go through. It was a result of administrative approval. So that's what my question is about. Development decisions which would have required public hearings and neighborhood workshops. There is an option to have them approved by city staff without these hearings and workshops through administrative approval. I want to know if you support administrative approval, and do you think that we have enough clarity in our code to have that option for city staff? So, Dan, you're first. Dan
Sure.
Claremont.
Thank you. Well, I would make a distinction between the downtown core and the rest of the city. First of all, we have administrative review when you want to go build your own house, but we're talking about large projects. Large projects downtown currently have the administrative review program or review process, and we've had that for a couple of decades now. And the view is a good one to bring up because as it was being built, it did, I used the term loomed. It loomed over the street. Now that it's been painted white, we've become used to it. It's not quite so offensive. I think part of that process there is I would like to have seen a little bit more of a setback there, as well as a requirement of first floor retail. It would have warmed the building. It would have been a kind of a handshake to the city instead of a wall against it. But the question is more about the review process. And I don't mind administrative review. And here is the reason for that is because if a developer comes in, buys a property, and he adheres to the code, he adheres to the comp plan, he adheres to all the zoning requirements, and then he goes before public hearings and then an up-down vote by the city commission, and is denied because of preference or pressure or emotion, a deep-pocketed developer can sue the city. And when you get before the judge will say, did it adhere to the zoning? Yes. Did it adhere to the comp plan? Yes. Did it adhere to all the codes? Yes. And we may lose. And state law now says that not only do we lose and the building gets built, we have to pay for their legal expenses, which can run into a lot of money. What I say we do is we address the fact that there are issues in the plan. You said, is it clear enough? It needs to be clear, and we have to have the people in the city, the owners of the city, work through hearings to change the code. I would like to see setbacks addressed. I just mentioned retail requirements and also side setbacks. We see what's happened at the Epic where it's virtually swallowed the nice building next to it that was built not that long ago. And I think that's a detriment to the owners in that building. And I don't think the aesthetics are good there. But if we're going to make those changes, let's do something that's ironclad. If there's a problem later and we are challenged by the developer, we can go and we can say, look, we made this as part of our code. This is the rules of the city. You knew it when you got involved in this plan, in this project, and you bought this property. To me, that's the way you do it. You change the rules, not the referees in the game.
Okay, Rob Grant, you're up next. Administrative approval. Tell us what you think.
This is a big problem in our city. I mean, the fact that a large, impactful development such as the View could actually happen and be built like that is really disturbing to me as a citizen. I mean, it's about the public realm, and these types of things that when they impact the public realm, we should have a say. This is our livable environment, and you know, this is why I'm doing this is because the voice of the people is not being heard. There are a lot of details for administrative review, but that allow projects to move forward. You can build a single family home, anything under 5,000 square feet, you know, with 100 feet of a neighborhood. There are a lot of development that can move forward under administrative review. But when you're talking about large, impactful development, this needs to be retracted. We should have a say in what happens in our downtown core. And I do agree with Dan too. I mean, it's been went for 7 years without any changes to the comprehensive plan. And we need to address these changes. I mean, we're a different world today. So, but I don't think that allowing large impactful developments to move forward without the public's being able to voice its opinion, I think it's contrary to what Sarasota is about. And so I would stand against that.
Okay, and finally, Eric Arroyo, administrative approval. What do you think?
So everyone agrees that we need a new code, and I was a big proponent of the form-based code, and I think we should bring it back. It's gathering dust somewhere on some shelf, but I would limit administrative approval to projects under 30,000 square feet in single-family homes. I think the Florida Constitution affords the public the right to access meetings, Section 24 of the Florida Constitution, and I get it. And in the zoning, there's two processes, right? So then in the zoning aspect of it, yes, everybody gets noticed, everybody is involved. But what we're talking about now is sort of on the tail end, towards the end of the project, we have a hearing, a compliance hearing. And I believe that it should be open to the public, even if the project is going to get approved anyway. Getting input from the people would make for better neighborhoods. It would make for better relations with the business and building community, because staff can't make all the decisions. City staff cannot.
Okay, all right. So next question has to do with our public health challenge, COVID-19. In the past week, we've seen a huge uptick in diagnosed positive tests for COVID-19 in the state of Florida, over 2,000 a day. Actually, Tuesday was a record-setting day with over 2,800 cases of COVID-19. You know, understanding that there has to be a coordinated message, and that may not be the case, I'm asking you about the role of the city commission. As a city commissioner, what kind of role would you want to see? You know, we have bars and restaurants opening downtown. They're crowded. Well, should there be restrictions? Should people be required to wear masks? And in the context of this, we did on social media yesterday see a post from Dr. Karen Hammond, who was, she was chief of staff, she may still be chief of staff at SMH, saying they're seeing more cases, more admissions, and these are not people who are elderly. They're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So, Rob, I'm going to start with you. What role does the city commission play with the pandemic?
Well, it has the same role that it always has, and that's policy. This is a public health crisis, and they need to be setting the policy. I mean, we've seen across the nation that often folks are not happy with the policies being set because they feel that it's impinging on their freedoms and their rights to live. But we all have to live together, and the public well-being does at times overtake our individual rights. And I think the commission should be active, and they should set policy decisions. Look, we are on the verge of becoming the new hotspot, you know, or one of them in the nation. And it's kind of frightening given what we've already been through in the past 3 months, how much we've all already had you know, to sacrifice to deal with this. So I think the city commission should meet as often as it can during this time, even and have discussions about what's going on, call emergency session, get together. And I think some of these, and consider some policies that would require masks. I mean, I am out in the community right now every day, you know, in my park, nobody's wearing masks, nobody. And it's a little frightening. So I think that setting up some public service announcements and the commissioners going out there and encouraging this sort of behavior as much as they can is what I would do if I were a city commissioner right now.
Okay, great. Eric Arroyo, your thoughts on the commission role with this global pandemic?
Well, I think we can all agree that I'm not a doctor. So I would seek the recommendations that the CDC is proposing. I would definitely work with Sarasota Memorial Hospital to see what recommendations can be made. On the policy side, which is what the city does, we would implement policies that promote social distancing. So we allow the businesses to not go under and allow them to maybe, I really like the idea of having the tables spread out downtown, and there's some restaurants that were putting barriers between tables. So I think the recommendations of the doctors, the CDC, and the hospital should drive the policies that guide us moving forward.
Okay, and Dan Claremont, your thoughts?
Yeah, somewhere along the line, it seemed that we decided that it was over, and everybody's kind of gone back to their regular lives in a lot of ways. And you go to restaurants, and I've even had an opportunity to step into a bar, and it seems like everybody's forgotten. And you're right, Rob, people aren't wearing masks all the time, and we should be. But that isn't really talking about the city. The city's role, I think, here is to make sure there's communication between the city and the hospitals and the professionals in the area, and say, are you being at a point where you could be overwhelmed? What can we do? Are there public buildings? Are there other buildings not being used that would be suitable for additional beds? How do we handle this if things do spin out of control? Because yeah, we are becoming a hotspot. When you look at the chart, it's going up fast. We have to keep in mind that testing is up between 60 and 70% over it was about a month and a half ago. So some of that can be misleading. But it's pretty clear that even though we decided we wanted to go back to regular life, that the virus is more or less in charge here. And we have, I don't want to see us have a shutdown. I don't want to see any of that. I think we as individuals have to understand that we have to look at our own circumstance. Who are the people we are exposed to every day, and what is the threat to them as we go out into the community? So we have to take a personal. We always want to look to the government. What's the government going to do for us? In this case, it is a personal matter of washing hands, keeping distance wherever you are. This thing's not done yet. It's not done yet by a long shot.
All righty. Thank you, gentlemen, for that answer. And we just have a few minutes left. So what I would like you to do is give me, we don't have time for big explanations. So I want to know what your top 3 priorities are were you to get elected for city commission, and then how can people get in touch with you? So who's up next? We're going to start with Eric Arroyo. You're first.
All right. Well, most of our tax dollars go towards fixing roads in downtown on the other side of 301 or Tamiami Trail. District 3 repeatedly gets the short end of the stick. So we need to address traffic concerns in Sarasota, to drive some of those dollars back to District 3, number 1. Number 2 is homelessness. We need to address the homelessness. I have a 7-step plan, which I've outlined, and I will talk to anyone about. Call me. My number's down there, I think. And the third thing would be the fiscal responsibility. We spend $5 million a year on legal fees. We spent over $2 million recently on odor studies and water taxi studies and all the studies in the world that are now obsolete because they're just in a shelf somewhere. So you should vote for me because I'm local. I've actually practiced law before the city commission before. I live here, and I've been very involved with the philanthropic community for many, many years. And because I make a commitment to put Sarasota first. So you can reach me. You can reach me at that website. Yes. ArroyoCampaign.com.
Yes, and you spell Arroyo ARROYO campaign.com. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Dan Claremont, your top 3 priorities if you're elected.
Thank you. Well, first of all, by naming 3 doesn't mean we're leaving out the other 10 that are important. But the ones I mentioned them a little bit earlier, and that would be environmental infrastructure. And dealing with stormwater. Now, coming to Sarasota, one of the top things that draws us all is the environment here. And all along the Gulf Coast, we have issues with wastewater management. We hear stories all the time about raw wastewater coming up into the streets, possibly ending up in the bay. And that's something that's very important to us. We've begun to address it with a $370 million program, but it's about a 10-year program. And we saw what happened with Lift Station 87. It got a bit out of control. It went from about an $8 million or $12 million project up to about 60. We can't have that kind of exponential growth when we're starting at 370. Another issue is the arts and culture industry here in our city, and it truly is an industry. We have many different organizations here, and we're very rich with our culture. It started back in the day of the Ringling Circus, and it's a backbone here, and we have to make sure we're working with them, finding out what's important for them so that they don't leave the city, as some have begun to do. Another thing I think that's very important in District 3 is the parks and public spaces. We can talk about redevelopment of already developed areas, but when we start talking about developing areas that are green space, I would put a stop to that. We have, when it comes to the Bobby Jones area or anywhere else where we have green space, I don't want to see development in those areas. You lose those areas, you lose them forever.
Okay, Dan Claremont, and people can get in touch with you. Your website is Dan, D-A-N, the number 4, Sarasota.com. And finally, Rob Grant, what are your 3 priorities? If you can
Hi, thank you, Kathy. So my first priority, we touched on it a little when we talked about the mayor today, but my first priority is that the next city commission will get the results of the census that's currently ongoing, and we'll have to consider redistricting. The next city commission will be responsible for appointing a charter review board to review the charter and determine if there needs to be any changes made to it. I think that that's the biggest issue for me, because everything, all these other issues, and this is what I said at the top of this, everything else that we have to address, how we address it, the way we approach it, and the solutions that we find will come from how our city is structured to function. And the people need to, I feel like folks maybe don't realize these stakes that are upcoming for the city commission as it relates to the city charter and the census and the redistricting that we're going to be facing at some point during this next city commission. So from there, it's about development and comprehensive plan and how that fits into that, and how we're going to make changes to that to move forward with the growth that we're going to have to address. And then the final point that I'll make is that what this all equals up to is equality. And we need to create a community where everybody has the same opportunity to access all the services, the job opportunities, the arts and culture, and everything that's great here. So thank you.
Okay.
You can reach me at rob@srq.com. You can always call me, 813-625-3237. Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much for being with me today. You've been listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. I want to remind you that Streets of Paradise is a charity that serves our homeless population in Sarasota. To find out more about them, to donate or volunteer, go to streetsofparadise.org. To find out more about what's going on in Sarasota, you can visit Citizens for Sarasota at Facebook. That's a group I moderate along with Tom Matrullo. We thank you for listening. Gentlemen, we thank you for running. This is a time when we need good people to step up to be public servants, and it's terrific to speak with you all today. So best of luck on the campaign trail.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Make it a great day.